So let's talk about capital constraints and how they play into the short run, long run decision. As we've established, we're living in this two good world or two input world where there are choices between capital like machinery and labor. And so that means that in the short run, something like capital, like your tractor, you can't get a new one or sell that tractor overnight. And so the time it takes for you to vary your capital is exactly the time between short run and long run decisions. And so in the short run, we're stuck with some fixed amount of capital. And how we graph this is on that isoquant isocost diagram, and maybe I'll do this in red. And what this says is if I happen to have right now, let's say, I'm going to make this up, say 10 units of capital. That's our capital constraint. And that says that I was producing, obviously I wouldn't have chosen for 10 units of capital if I weren't choosing to produce a profit maximizing quantity at 4. And so I was producing using a combination of capital and labor represented by point B. So this is like some amount of labor. Let's call this L naught. There's a market shock and I want to reduce the amount of goods I produce. My new profit maximizing quantity is Q equals 3. Maybe there was a sales tax, maybe there's an increase in wages, maybe there's a decrease in demand for your product. We talked about, the realities of working for direct TV every single day. There's less and less subscribers, more people canceling. And so all of that would drive a reduction in the quantity in the marketplace. And so the question is, what happens? You want to be on this 3 isoquants, so you want to be somewhere on here. And in the long run, we know we want to be at a point of tangency. We reviewed that enough times. So we want to be at, let's call this L long run and K long run. But today I have too much capital. And because today I have too much capital, I have some choices. So maybe let's say that K long run represents 5 units of capital. And so I want to get rid of 5 machines, but today I'm stuck with them. And so what should I do when I am changing my profit maximizing quantity of production? So we've talked about, well, if you're a business owner and you think you can sort of hide that machinery and avoid that cost, you just take 5 sewing machines and put a big blanket over it, pretend like they don't exist. Well, then you make your total cost of production super high because you're not going to be producing at point A. In fact, you're still going to be facing these $10 or 10 unit capital expenses, but you are also going to have to produce with L long run labor. So we drove that total cost in the short run really, really high because I'm going to be facing the opportunity cost of having 10 units of labor, but only employing 5 of them means that I have to have a whole bunch more labor. So instead, what we said is that we could be at the intersection of this isoquant and 10 capital constraint, and we can mitigate this effect of having too much capital by employing every single unit of capital, realizing there's an opportunity cost to hold on to that capital, whether or not I use it or not. I could be renting it out, I could be selling it, and so I incur that cost even when I'm not using it. And so let's add this as point, D. And so I could produce at point B, and in the short run, I could mitigate this effect of having too much capital by reducing my labor even more than I want to in the long run. So maybe I'm sending somebody home on a Friday, or reducing their workload for the week until I can get rid of all that capital and get to point A. So this D would be like where I want to be in the short run, and A would be where I want to be in the long run. And until I can sell that capital, I'm stuck at point D. I can mitigate that effect of too high capital by reducing my labor and being at that intersection between the isoquant and the capital constraint. And this is why in the short run, our costs are at best equal, but almost always higher than our long run total costs. And it's because we're often stuck with some amount of capital, some amount of land, some amount of machinery that isn't optimizing in the long run. And so we can mitigate that effect by doing this and moving to D. And so you move to D and then you start trying to sell all those machines until you got to point A. So that is analyzing how our allocation of labor and capital changes in the long run versus the short run because of this fixed capital effect.